Hello and welcome to the Business English Podcast. I'm Rob and today I want to share a story about someone named Charlie. Picture this. Charlie is a highly skilled professional from overseas who landed a great job in London. He's motivated, intelligent and eager to succeed. But there's a catch. His English is decent, but whenever colleagues come to him with an urgent request or tight deadline, he just can't bring himself to say no. Instead, he ends up saying yes to everything. Does this sound familiar? Does this ring a bell? Maybe you've been there, juggling endless tasks, feeling overwhelmed, and worrying about how you're coming across to colleagues or clients. Charlie's biggest fear is appearing rude. After all, in many cultures, refusing a request can feel awkward, even disrespectful in some cases. So Charlie overcompensates by always agreeing, even when it pushes him to the brink of burnout. If you've ever found yourself in a similar spot, nodding along to requests you know you shouldn't accept, stick around. In this episode, we're going to dive into a powerful skill that could change the way you communicate at work, especially if English isn't your first language. It's all about diplomatic phrasing for assertiveness and boundary setting. You might be wondering, well, okay, but why is this so important? Imagine having the ability to say no without sounding negative or unhelpful. What if you could politely decline unrealistic demands, negotiate timelines, and protect your own workload, all while maintaining professional, positive relationships? And here's where it gets exciting. I'm going to share simple, effective phrases and strategies you can use in your next tricky conversation. We'll talk about the exact wording that instantly shows respect, clarity, and professionalism. We'll also explore the subtle differences in tone and expression that can keep your relationships strong no matter how firm your refusal. By the end of this episode, you'll learn how to handle pushy requests, clarify your own limits, and maintain that delicate balance between approachability and assertiveness. So, if you're curious about how to diplomatically yet firmly protect your boundaries in English, you won't want to miss the next part, where we'll uncover why this skill is such a game changer in the world of business communication. Stay tuned because we'll also talk about common mistakes people make when trying to say no and how to avoid them. Plus, I'll give you some insider tips on building a confident tone that leaves a lasting positive impression. Ready? Let's dive in. Now, if you've ever felt that twinge of discomfort when you need to turn down a request or push back on a tight deadline, this section is for you. Let's start by clearing up a common misconception. Assertiveness isn't about being aggressive. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Assertiveness is about clarity and respect, getting your point across without harming relationships. And in an international business environment where cultural differences can make communication even more complex, striking that balance between politeness and firmness can be the difference between smooth collaboration and uneasy tension. So why is this skill so essential? First, it helps you protect your time and workload. When you can politely say no to an extra project or renegotiated deadline, you avoid spreading yourself too thin. Imagine the relief of being in control of your schedule instead of feeling trapped by it. Second, you'll maintain healthier relationships. People respect those who communicate honestly and professionally, even if that means declining a request. And finally, a well-placed, polite refusal can elevate your credibility. It signals that you're organized, you respect your own capacity, and you won't compromise on quality just to please everyone. But this isn't just theory. Let's look at a few real-life scenarios. Think about a tight client deadline. The client wants an impossible turnaround, and you know you can't deliver the quality they expect in that time. By using diplomatic language, you can highlight your concern for quality while proposing a more realistic schedule. Or picture your office environment. Your colleague asks you to take on a task that isn't in your scope, and it's going to overload your calendar. Instead of jumping in with a hurried, "Yeah, sure," you can respond with a balanced statement that acknowledges the importance of the task but clarifies your current constraints. In the next section, we'll dive into exactly how to structure these phrases, from the polite opener to the firm no to the graceful follow-up. We'll cover specific wording and tone, plus a few insider tips on making sure your message lands exactly how you want it to. So stay tuned, because mastering this skill can really transform the way you handle difficult requests at work, whether you're speaking to your boss, a client, or even a pushy colleague. And once you can say no without damaging any relationships, you'll find a whole new sense of confidence in your day-to-day interactions. Ready to find out exactly how to phrase your responses? Keep listening. We'll break it down step by step in just a moment. Right, before we dive into some effective boundary-setting phrases, I want to share a quick reminder. If you find these tips helpful, there are 2 ways to learn more and take your professional English to the next level. Firstly, you can sign up for our weekly newsletter, the 3-Minute Minutes, where we provide powerful professional resources and transcripts of episodes perfect for anyone looking to accelerate their business English. Or, if you're ready for even faster, more in-depth progress, join the Business English Podcast Premium subscription. All the links you need are in the show notes. Now, let's talk about how to form diplomatic, assertive responses. Remember, the goal is to say no in a way that's both firm and respectful, so you protect your time and preserve relationships. Phrase 1. I'm afraid I won't be able to accommodate that request. I'm afraid I won't be able to accommodate that request. Imagine a colleague asks you to cover their work at the last minute. You're already swamped, but you still want to sound polite. This phrase shows regret and politeness through "I'm afraid," and "accommodate" is a formal word suggesting you understand their needs but simply can't meet them right now. "I'm afraid" softens the refusal, making it sound less abrupt. "Accommodate" signals willingness if possible, but makes it clear it's not feasible in this case. Phrase 2. I appreciate you thinking of me, but I have to decline due to my current workload. I appreciate you thinking of me, but I have to decline due to my current workload. A supervisor offers you an exciting project, but you already have multiple deadlines looming. You don't want to shut them down rudely, so you start by thanking them. I appreciate you thinking of me. Then you clearly state you must decline. The positive opener here, I appreciate, keeps the tone friendly and professional. Decline is a clear, direct verb that firmly sets a boundary. Due to my current workload explains that reason without over-apologizing. Phrase 3. Unfortunately, I can't commit to that right now. Let's look at other possibilities. Unfortunately, I can't commit to that right now. Let's look at other possibilities. You're in a meeting and someone suggests a timeline that's totally unrealistic. Rather than flatly saying no, you use this phrase to show you acknowledge their idea, but can't fully invest in it at the moment. Unfortunately conveys polite regret. I can't commit to that right now is direct but not dismissive. It simply states your limitation. And let's look at other possibilities shifts the focus to finding a mutually workable solution, keeping the conversation collaborative. Phrase 4. I'd love to help, but I have to respect my existing deadlines first. I'd love to help, but I have to respect my existing deadlines first. This is a great one if you genuinely do want to help, but you have priorities you can't ignore. Maybe a team member needs support on a project, but you have an important client presentation coming up. By emphasizing your love to help, you soften the refusal. "I'd love to help" conveys that enthusiasm and goodwill. "But I have to respect my existing deadlines" gently but clearly outlines your boundary. This approach can maintain a positive relationship because it shows commitment to quality and prior obligations. Now, mastering these phrases will help you stand your ground without stepping on any toes. In the next part, we'll talk about common errors to avoid and how you can refine your delivery for maximum impact. You'll also learn tips to make your tone sound confident rather than apologetic. So, make sure you stay tuned. Right, in this segment, we're tackling some of the most common mistakes people make when trying to politely say no or set boundaries in an international business context. If you've been following along, you've already discovered the power of certain key phrases. But what about the pitfalls that can undermine your message? One of the first big errors is over-apologizing. It is something we do mention a lot on the podcast because we see it as so prevalent on the international business stage. It's understandable, of course. It's natural to want to be polite, especially if your cultural background places a high value on avoiding conflict. However, repeatedly saying "I'm sorry" can weaken your position and make you sound unsure. It's absolutely fine to show empathy and regret, but make sure that it's brief and balanced. Too many apologies, and you risk sounding as though you're the one at fault, rather than someone who's simply setting a reasonable limit. Another common pitfall is over-explaining. Think about it. When someone asks you to take on a task you can't handle, do you sometimes launch into a laundry list of reasons why you can't do it? While offering a concise explanation can be helpful, you don't need to justify every detail. Doing so can come across as insecure or even defensive. A straightforward, polite refusal often carries more authority, and ironically, it's often better received. And then there's the matter of tone. Even if you have the perfect words, if your tone sounds irritated or abrupt, your message might feel harsh. On the flip side, if you're too soft and uncertain, you can undermine your own assertiveness. Striking that balance is crucial. If you're communicating verbally, maintain a calm, steady pace. In emails, choose diplomatic phrases and keep the message concise but friendly. Let's not forget about grammatical slip-ups. Maybe you're trying to say, "I can't commit to that," but in the rush of a stressful conversation, it comes out as "I not can commit to that." While minor grammar errors aren't the end of the world, they can reduce clarity and professionalism. Make sure you practice your refusal phrases enough so they roll off the tongue smoothly, even in high-pressure moments. Culturally, you should also be aware that no means different things in different regions. In some places, direct refusals are expected and respected. In others, saying no outright might be seen as too blunt. When in doubt, leaning on these diplomatic yet clear phrases will help you avoid unnecessary friction. That way, you're not offending a more indirect culture, nor are you confusing someone from a more direct one. Finally, a subtle but significant pitfall is forgetting the follow-up. Once you've said your no, don't vanish. If there's a chance you can help in the future or you can propose another solution, be proactive. This shows your willingness to collaborate even if you can't fulfill the immediate request. Now, in our next and final segment, we're going to tie everything together, we'll recap the key takeaways and share a few final thoughts on how to master assertiveness without damaging relationships or your own peace of mind. Stay tuned because we'll also discuss practical ways you can keep building these skills long after this episode ends. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of the Business English Podcast. We've covered a lot. How to say no politely yet firmly, how to protect your time without damaging relationships, and some of the biggest pitfalls to avoid when setting boundaries in English. But before you go, I want to leave you with one final tip. When you say no, make sure your body language matches your words. If you're in a face-to-face meeting or on a video call, avoid nervous fidgeting, excessive smiling, or looking away. These can make you seem uncertain. Instead, maintain steady eye contact, use an open posture, and keep your tone calm and even. Your nonverbal communication should reinforce your confidence, not contradict it. Now, if today's episode resonated with you, don't just listen, practice. Pick one of the phrases from today and start using it in real conversations. And if you need a refresher, remember, you can grab the transcript in the 3-Minute Minutes, our free weekly newsletter packed with professional English upgrades. Or if you're ready to accelerate your skills even further, check out the Business English Podcast premium subscription for exclusive content and deep dive training. The links are both in the show notes, so make sure you check them out. And if you found this episode valuable, share it with a friend or colleague who could use a little help with their diplomatic assertiveness. That's it for today. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode, where we'll dive into yet another skill to help you sound more professional, confident, and fluent in business English. Until then, keep practicing, stay sharp, and of course, keep it strictly business.